Humanity Matters.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Rosenblum. I am the Director of Education here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center, and I'm so privileged today to have Willi Handler with us for our podcast, Legacy Chronicles, Honoring the Past and Shaping the Future. We're going to be talking to Willi today about his family's history, about his growing up as a second generation, about his book. And we're going to start off by first welcoming and saying thank you for being on our podcast.
Well, thank you for having me here.
We're very excited. And first off, can you briefly just give me an overview of each of your parents' stories?
Certainly. My father was from Poland, and he actually was born in a very small village. And during the Depression, the entire family picked up and left and went to a larger city called Benzin, which is where he was when the war broke out.
Is this Western Poland, Eastern Poland, Northern Poland?
So he was born in central Poland, and as a sort of perspective, Benzin is probably about 20, 25 miles from Auschwitz.
Okay.
And he was deported in 1942, early that year, and ended up in 7 different camps before he was liberated in a camp called, it's not a very well-known one, but it was Bisigen, it was called.
Okay.
My mother was from Romania. She came from a very small village. There were 20 Jewish families. And there was a pogrom there, and they were driven out. And eventually the entire region, Bukovina, all the Jews were deported to Transnistria, which was a region in the Ukraine made up of a lot of ghettos and camps. And that's where she remained until she was liberated by the Russians in the spring of 1944.
Wow. So, did each of your parents have other siblings or family that survived? Are they the only survivors of their family?
My mother was relatively did well, their family. She only had one sibling that perished on the way to Transnistria.
All right. And
because they made it so that, it made it pretty harsh so that there were a lot of beatings and shootings, so on and so forth. And so not everyone made it. She had 2 siblings who actually emigrated from Romania before the war in the 1920s to New York.
Okay.
And she had one brother who deserted from the Romanian army and headed to Palestine.
Okay.
So.
And your father?
My father, he was a family of 6, and 4 of them went to camps, and 2 of them went to the gas chambers in Auschwitz. Okay. So, my family did well relatively compared to other families.
Right. When did they come to the United States?
Well, my parents met in Israel after the war.
Okay.
My mother came illegally. My father came after independence, and they moved to Canada in 1953.
Okay.
And that's where I was born.
Okay. And you grew up in Canada?
Yes, I did.
All right. So when did you first understand that your parents were Holocaust survivors and what that meant? Were they part of a survivor community? What age did you kind of know that things were a little different there?
I would say probably at birth is one of those situations where they lived in the survivor community. They hung out with other survivors. My father worked in a Jewish market in Toronto. Most of them there were survivors as well that he knew from the camps. So we were very much integrated into that community.
Okay. Did your parents continue to speak other languages? I mean, were you brought up with English, or did they speak Yiddish? Did they?
They spoke Yiddish to us, and in fact, my mother would often tell me at the age of 4, I yelled at them to stop speaking Yiddish to me and that they should speak English.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
I have an older sister who was actually born in Israel.
Okay.
When they were there, and I have a younger brother who was also born in Toronto.
Okay. And do they live in America now, or Canada?
They're both living in Canada. Yes.
Okay. So, do you have like any significant memories of being a second generation? Of obviously you had friends that were Canadian that lived different lifestyles than you did. Were there things that you knew that you just didn't share with your friends, or did you have friends come over to your house? Like, how was growing up like for you?
Quite different.
Yeah.
I think you always feel different, and you can't explain why sometimes. At least you couldn't when you were younger. Now you can. Your parents spoke with an accent, and they dressed differently. They act peculiar. They never really integrated it well at all. And one of the things that really stood out to me is how independent I had to become, because they weren't integrated. So if you have an issue at school, I had to deal with it myself. It got to the point where, if my mother had to do a note to the school, she couldn't write it herself. I would write it, and then she would sign it. And at one point, I said, "Oh, the hell of it! I would just sign it myself." And the signature in the school office was mine,
right?
Not hers. So I tried to expedite the process,
right?
But no one to help you with homework, no one to help you make decisions in life, and so on and so forth. So as a child, you end up being very much in the survival mode yourself.
Right.
They were very, very loving and almost smothering, but they never really knew how to provide emotional support.
Right. Yeah, and then you hear that a lot. I mean, many second generations have similar experiences and situations.
Absolutely.
And again, as an oldest or the youngest, also affects how things progressed. So you went to college?
Yes, I did.
And what did you study?
I had an undergraduate degree in Toronto, and then I actually did a master's in health administration at Temple University in Philadelphia.
Okay. And your career of your life has been?
It's bounced around a bit. I was working in hospital administration for a number of years, and then I moved to the government and I did public policy. And eventually I left and did some consulting, and now I'm an author.
Right. So let's think about what drove you to write this beautiful book about your family, about yourself, and the need to educate about the Holocaust. When did that start percolating in your being that this was something you wanted to do, or did it, or was it just that you woke up one day and said, "I'm doing this"?
It was a bit of a genesis. I very much kind of, for a period of my life, ran away from the Holocaust. Not that you can. That
right.
shadow follows you around. And it was actually early in the pandemic where people do a lot of introspection. And my wife had been pushing me to write about my family story for quite a while. And I decided at that point I would do it. And so I sat down, and I really didn't know their story very well. Not at my father especially did not like talking about it. He got very emotional and upset. And so I started doing a lot of research. I spent 2 years researching their stories, piecing together what they told me and filling in all the blanks.
What years did they pass away?
My mother passed away in 2008, and my father passed away in 2008, and my mother 2.5 years later in 2011.
Okay. So did they give any kind of formal testimony ever? Did they do like a Shoah Foundation type of tape or?
Yeah, my mother did. My father would not.
And your father would not.
I did not listen to it until I started writing the book itself. I assumed I already knew everything, and I didn't gain that much more because her testimony reflected really a lot of what she told me, which was, and she was not very good at telling her story. There were so many blanks, things that she couldn't remember, which I believe was result of her own trauma, where she blanked out a lot of information. So it wasn't a very coherent story.
Right, right. Are there particular questions that now that you've done this research, now that you've written this book, now that you've really delved into, that you would love to ask them if they were still here?
So many.
I'm sure.
There's so many.
That's another very common
everybody's
theme.
The same.
Yes.
If I had known I was going to write this book, I would force them to tell me all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you started this during COVID, and was it like therapy for you to write this book? Did you uncover things that you didn't know about yourself? Did it kind of connect the dots a little bit for you with your life?
A lot of people ask me if it was cathartic. Mm-hmm. It was the complete opposite. It was very much a triggering kind of process that actually drove me to therapy. And I remember the point at which it really impacted on me. Very quickly, my father, he often spoke about his wife and his daughter, his older daughter, and we were not aware that he had 2 daughters.
Wow.
He never spoke about his younger one. We did not even know. We did not even know the ages. He always talked about his 4-year-old daughter, and so at one point of the research, I decided that I was going to get marriage and birth registrations for the family. And when it came back from Poland, I discovered that he had 2 daughters, not one, and the family was in shock. I'm sure my mother did not know he had 2 daughters. It was something that he just buried. And in fact, the older one never reached the age of 4. I don't know why he was stuck on the age of 4, but what I did learn, because I was able to piece together when they were sent to Auschwitz, is that the older one was 27 months and the younger one was 11 months when they perished.
Wow. How about your siblings? How do they feel about your writing this book, about your wanting to document and know all of this? Are they supportive, or do they think you're kind of crazy? Maybe a combo.
No. What happened is, my sister's been very supportive, and although she wasn't able to contribute very much to it, because she knew as little as I did. I mean, she was also shocked about all the things that I uncovered. My brother is estranged from the family, which is also not unusual in survivor families, and I have no idea what he thinks about the book.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know that must be painful as well. So, what is the basic message that you want the outside world for people? I mean, I'm assuming that this book was not written so much for the survivor community. I mean, I'm sure, obviously it has a place there too. But I mean, most of us, and even our mission here at hmTC, is for those people that are not understanding of the Holocaust, do not have an understanding of Judaism, do not understand Israel, do not understand the history. And they come through our doors and we educate them as to why this is such an important event that we need to understand, we need to learn from, and we need to prevent future atrocities of this nature. What what do you, maybe what are some of the common little tidbits of information that was so important for you to get to the outside world with this book?
Well, first thing is when I wrote the book, I was very much intent on writing it for a non-Jewish audience.
Okay.
Who did not understand the war. And I used my family as sort of the backdrop to explain how the war developed and what happened to them and other Jewish people in their communities. And from the feedback I get, I think I did a very good job at that. And so that was it, is to help people understand. I don't even talk about Holocaust education. I talk about Holocaust awareness, because we're at the state now in society where people aren't even fully aware that it happened.
Right.
Then the message is very clear. It's about the dangers of hate. And so I structured the book in 3 parts. The first part was my family's history up until the end of the war. Then it's about my own youth and growing up as a descendant of a survivor. And the last part is talking about hate, trauma, all those other kinds of issues that totally connect to children of Holocaust survivors. And part of it was very much an awareness that, and many people don't understand, even other Jewish people, is that the trauma that survivors were exposed to have been passed on to their children.
Yes.
And that's a very important part of the book. And in fact, it's the theme of my next book that hopefully will be coming out soon.
Oh, and that's exciting. And when do we think that that's going to happen?
Well, I have an agent who's busy working trying to find a publisher. But the book is actually about intergenerational trauma, and I interviewed over 100 descendants, 2Gs and 3Gs, to talk about their own families and their own and their experience growing up.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. Yeah, so I mean, you're on point with many of those themes and missions. I mean, there's so much Holocaust distortion, denial, just a lack of understanding of it. And I think what you're are doing, and again, I think it's in line with what hmTv is doing, is we try to bring humanity into this. We want to teach the Holocaust through the lens of real people, so that students, adults, anybody can make a connection and be empathetic, because that's really the key, is empathy.
And one of the unique things that I'm doing is, because I do talk a lot of this stuff now, is that I've teamed up with a friend of mine who, in her youth, was a white supremacist, and we sort of joined forces to talk about hate.
Wow.
From a very different perspective.
Yes.
Because she used to be a Holocaust denier.
Right.
And
how did that happen? Can you brief? I know it's probably another 25-minute story, but how did you meet her, and how did that come to be?
Sort of very quickly. I actually heard her speak maybe 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm on social media, and one day she kind of reached out to me, and I recognized her name for some reason. She really stuck in my mind, recognized her name right away. And the first thing I asked her was, and I knew she was doing a lot of speaking out against hate. And I said, would you like to join forces with me, and we can start developing programs together? And she said, definitely. And we're good friends now. And
does she live in Canada too?
She lives in Toronto as well.
Okay.
Yes. And it's very powerful coming from the two different perspectives. And we in the fall we did something for the Simon Wiesenthal in Canada, and we're trying to do some presentations for the police in Toronto as well. It's important for them to hear it.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, and that's a lot of what I'm doing now as well. Is I'm trying to make more awareness about the dangers of hate.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and
it's only getting worse, not better.
Yes, it's just more extreme, and I think that. We were just talking the other day about, free speech and hate speech, and that we even have to make a distinguished note that hate speech is not free speech. You don't have the freedom to say these things. That's not democracy. It's disturbing that we have to have that conversation at all. But.
And in Canada, we actually have hate laws, which define the difference between hate and free speech, which is also protected in Canada. The problem is that it's not very well enforced.
Right.
And so, there are law that you can write all the laws you want.
They have to be
But
enforced.
if not being enforced, then
and you have to inform the public also of what to do when they encounter these situations. So we had the anti-bias unit here for a community meeting, the police task force, and. I had known this, but it was nice for this police detective to say, if you encounter a situation where someone does something or yells something or is involved in any type of hate speech, hate rhetoric, you call 911 and you let the police come and you let the police handle it and let them investigate it right on site. And they will make the determination if it's hate speech or not, and then they will prosecute and arrest. But if you don't call, and you just call 6 hours later and say this incident happened, you're out of luck. And as a young girl, I was always taught you only call 911 if someone is dying, like in an emergency. And now that has changed, but I don't think the public in general knows that. So it's important for students, it's important for people to understand that they don't have to tackle it themselves. There are places and organizations that can deal with this.
Well, in Toronto, the Jewish community, which is relatively large, does not have much confidence in the police department. And in fact, just last week, a retired homicide detective was interviewed on TV and was speaking about the amount of anti-Semitism in the upper ranks of the police force. Yeah. And the community shocked but not surprised.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I happen to feel very strongly about our police here in Nassau and Suffolk and the job they do, but every single police cadet comes through our doors, Nassau and Suffolk, for training.
It's something I'm going to be recommending when I go home.
And I think that also, again, makes a huge difference. That we're here, and they, and sometimes these same police officers will then be patrolling our grounds and be like, oh, I remember when I was here for training, and it's very powerful. So, there are always things that we can do. There's always more that can be done, and I think the mindset is that we just have to be out there. We can't give up. We can't put our head in the sand. We can't just say, oh my God, it's so terrible out there. There's nothing that we can do. When people say Holocaust education isn't working, I say, well, if we didn't have any Holocaust education, where would we be? Like, that's not the answer.
And my message when I speak to Jewish groups is that don't hide who you are.
That's right.
That, there's no reason you should be.
Right.
And
you should not be ashamed.
Proud of who you are and stand up for your rights.
Exactly. Your rights are just as important as anybody else's. And we everyone should be able to be who they are. It doesn't matter, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your sexual preference. That's why we live in America. And, hopefully we will swing back to that, and that will be much more embraced by our country and by the world. But I want to thank you so much, Willi, for being with us today. And I'm so looking forward to hearing you speaking very shortly to our here at our community group that's going to be here. And for everyone out there, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, and listen to more of our wonderful hmTv podcasts. Thank you.